Let me read the brocha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kedeshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'suk b'divrei Torah, v'arev na Adonai Eloheinu et divrei Toratcha b'filu p'cha beit Yisrael, v'niyeh anachnu v'tzeitzeinu v'tzeitzecha beit Yisrael, kulanu yodea shemecha v'lomdei Toratech lishma, Baruch atah Adonai l'mei Torah l'mu Yisrael.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher b'cha banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu Torato, Baruch atah Adonai notein HaTorah. Kevin, take it away.
Okay, here we go. Okay, there we go. Here's a very interesting one. Okay, there's actually a few here. Okay. It says inquiring about a potential partner. That's business and marriage. Okay, usually if they say this. If you are considering a partnership with someone in business, you are permitted to inquire about details of that person's character and behavior. The same applies if you are seeking a partner in marriage. You are permitted to do so even in instances where you have not previously heard anything derogatory about that person. Even though your inquiry may provoke the revelation of derogatory information, it is nonetheless permissible, since your intention is to prevent future disputes or damage. Example, Mr. Teller needs a carpenter to repair his cupboards. He is allowed to ask a friend about the reliability of a particular carpenter. Okay, so, but one would think that if someone says this guy might be, everyone has different experiences with artisans or service providers. So it's a subjective thing like that. The guy might be good in other aspects.
Yeah. You're saying it's subjective. What did you say?
It could be based on experience. Maybe someone had a bad experience, but maybe other people had good experiences.
Yeah. No, it's
an example. So it's it's not so cut and dried. But I didn't know that. It said, because I mean, obviously, if you want a job to be done, a guy BS's you the whole time. I'll do it, and he doesn't. Then
I think the query is not to ask. I think the difficulty is how to answer if you had a bad experience. That's quite tough, Kev. That really is tough.
I don't know why you can't be direct, though, Damon. I'll be honest.
No, I was direct when I had a particularly bad incident. I said, listen, person was interested in their agenda, not in mine. They did exactly what suited them. They did the correct mechanical job, in the sense that I do believe they're a good mechanic, but their agenda always was to, they didn't get asked for a quote. I didn't want to leave them stiffed with money, but I don't believe their agenda was for me, the customer, or a fellow friend at all. I said, but I do not believe they cheated me in the sense that they didn't do the mechanical job. I said, but I personally would have every quote in writing from them and tell them up front that if you are going to go with them and they do a job that you have not authorized, they won't get a cent. And that was as objective as I could.
No, fair enough. And that's actually a very diplomatic. So what you're saying then, Damon, based on what...
And you know the incident, by the way.
I know the incident, and I think you handled it very well. And I think your response, I think you've mentioned it briefly to us in the past.
Yeah.
It's a very good diplomatic response. So, Kevin, that's a good answer, is that if you're looking for a service provider or whatever, when you ask somebody about somebody else, you say it, but in a very diplomatic way. Damon said it like indirectly that the guys, well, they don't have a problem with mechanical. They have a problem with they don't give you quotes. And that's fair enough. 100%, they didn't give him a quote, and he got ripped off because of that, But he didn't say it. He said it in a very diplomatic way, and I think that's the way to do it, to cover yourself for Lashon Hara. So well done, Damon. Your examples are very good, actually.
I wish it wasn't a real example.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, we ended off on 26a2. We've done the second Kova Kamma. Now we're going to get into a complicated discussion. Okay, so the Gemara now proceeds to a completely different inquiry. Now, listen carefully. This will be resolved on the basis of a statement by Rabbi Talmud related to his view in our Mishnah. They inquired if through an act of Regel an animal stepped on a child on the premises of the damaged party, killing the child. So what sort of case are we talking about here, guys? Is if the animal was walking normally and without any injurious intent, and it stepped on a child in its path. So obviously the inquiry specifies on the premises of the damaged party. So what do we mean here? It's on the premises of the child's parents, because that's the only place in which one is liable for an act of Regel, according to Rashi.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So what's the law regarding the owner? Does the owner pay Kofer for Regel? This is the big discussion now. We know that you pay Kofer. Now, what is Kofer again? Kofer is that this ox is muad, that ox is a habitual gora, according to all the rabbis. And in that particular case, one should pay with one's life because you're responsible for the death of that child or that adult or whatever the case may be, when your ox scores another person and it kills a person. But you redeem your life by virtually going financially broke. It forms an atonement because you should have known better. Now, Rabbi Tarfon holds a little bit different with the act of Kofer, and so does. So Rabbi Tarfon says what with Kofer? That you pay half payment damages for Kofer with regard to Keren Tam. Does that make sense? Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why that is. Because, and he even says you pay full Kofer payment damages if it's on the premises of the damaged party. So Rabbi Talfon goes one step above Rabbi Yossi Glili, because Rabbi Yossi Glili interprets the verse. Remember when it says that if your ox that has been forewarned kills if your ox kills a man or a woman, does that make sense? Then for that you are liable. So what the rabbis interpreted is that only pertains to a muad, a forewarned ox. But Rav Yossi Haglili turns around and says, no, the exclusionary term is not based on tam. So the rabbis say that there is an exclusionary term in that verse. But they say that exclusionary term has come to exclude tam. Because why should the owner pay for a tame ox or an ox that's created less than 3 incidents? For what reason? Well, the reason being is that it's not the owner's fault, according to the rabbi's opinion, because it's not a muad ox yet. And therefore, there's no payment for a tam ox for the Kofer part. The damage is, yes, the death part, but not the Kofer part, the atonement part. But Rav Yosef Haglili, I'm going to get to your questions now, turns around and says, listen, there's no mention of the word tam from an exclusionary point of view. The verse actually comes to exclude a unborn fetus. That's what it's actually coming to exclude, because it said if a man or a woman, and not if a woman was pregnant with a child and the ox hit her and the unborn fetus actually died as a result. For that is where the exclusionary term comes from. Does that make sense, guys?
Just explain that. I got it, I think, but just explain it a little bit clearer. Sorry, or just expound on it. Maybe expound on it. I think you were clear. I think just expound on it a little bit.
Okay. So, Kev, we're talking about.
I'm being confused with you say a half Kofer payment.
Yeah. I'm going to.
You got a full. You pay half damage in certain instances, but what's is a half Kofer payment over and above a half payment or a full payment? Is it a separate payment? You say half Kofer, half.
Okay, so look, we're going to.
What does that mean?
This. All right, I'm going to explain it quickly, but then we're going to go through it more in depth. Right?
I just had a problem with the end, but you can go to the whole thing. I just had a problem with the last line.
So we're going to go through it separately. But on 48b in the Mishnah, it talks about Rav Yossi Haglili, okay?
Yeah.
And it interprets the verse. Basically, it's a verse in Shmot, Exodus chapter 21, verse 29 to 30. So it states that the law of Kofer is only in regards to a muad. That's how the rabbis interpret it.
Okay.
And they state regarding the owner of a tam that kills and the owner of the ox is absolved, which seems to state explicitly that he doesn't pay for Kofer. Why? Because the animal's tame. But Rav Yossi Haglili doesn't interpret it this way. He basically interprets the verse and says, and the owner of the ox is absolved, to mean that the owner of the tam that gores a pregnant woman doesn't pay for the aborted fetus. And if an ox gores a man or a woman and the person dies, which might refer to a pregnant woman, according to Rav Yosef Haglili's verse, there's no verse that explicitly excludes Kofer in the case of a tam. And he would rule that just as one pays half damages for tam, you pay half Kofer for tam in the public domain. So again, let me just tell you the views of the rabbi, the general views of the rabbi. This is before we get to the case of Regel, Gav.
Yeah, understand.
So we're going to determine now, where's Arthur? What we're saying is, listen, before we hit this Kofer issue with regards to Regel, do we pay Kofer for Regel? Let's at least understand this in the case of its known source. So what's the known source with regards to Keren? Because Keren has two factors to it. Now go from tame to forewarned. That's the one aspect of Keren, okay? Where it's why? Because it's unusual damage. So one of the characteristics, why don't you pay in full like all the other damages? Because it's unusual for your ox to go rogue and injure and kill somebody. Because of that unusualness, that's a specific, unique characteristic of Keren, okay? The unusualness. Your second unique characteristic of Keren is the animal's intent to injure or kill. That's the second unique feature. So before we go through an act of Regel and see if it would fit, what we have to decide what is the opinion regarding Kofer as far as the rabbis, Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Haglili. That's exactly what we have to determine. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're gonna hit this issue in 26a3, and then I'll have the sourcing up. But in essence, the rabbis interpret it as follows: only if your ox is forewarned and muad do you pay the Kofer payment. Let me give you their logic.
That if a person gets killed in the process, that the ox, regardless of its status, becomes moed.
Okay, so this is a very, very interesting point.
That's what I'm battling with a bit here.
Okay, this is a very, very interesting point. The first thing that you've got to understand is that, firstly, if somebody gets injured by an ox, okay, then it's definitely muad. It's definitely muad for animals, because on what Gavin's saying is because a person's got its own. A person's got two attributes. He's got the ability of divine intelligence, where he can notice something charging for him more than another animal can. So in that degree, he's got what you call a divine intelligence to almost be forewarned. And the second thing is he's got divine destiny, which means if another ox got gored and became steak, it's not going to break up the divine plan. You know, it's not that cow isn't going to be a more refined cow in terms of character traits, etc. So why am I saying this? If an ox injures a person, then it becomes muad for animals. But if an ox is muad for animals, it doesn't mean it's necessarily muad for a person. But we're going to go through these halachas. We went through it before when we talked about the word mazal. And then Gavin's bringing a second point, is that surely when an ox kills a person or injures a person, it then becomes automatically muad. It's like becomes more stringent as opposed to just attacking another animal. So we're also going to go through this. What we're going to deal with now is what you call known factors. And known factors are things we've done before. So
okay,
let's just discuss.
Before you get to that one, sorry, I apologize for interrupting. Just if I still have that same problem. I don't understand why why a pregnant woman, if the fetus dies, you exempt from paying anything. I don't understand that.
No, you're not exempt from anything, Kevin. There's a difference between damages and Kofer. Kofer is an atonement-based payment. It's a different payment. They're different categories of payment.
Yes, no, I understand that, but I'm just saying, if a child is killed, if the ox walks over that child or a pregnant woman and kills a pregnant woman, then you're culpable for
Okay,
Kofer
but
payment.
you're mixing up two different payments here. What are you mixing up? You're mixing actual damages versus Kofer. They're two separate issues. They're two separate payments.
So what payment is there for if the fetus dies?
Okay, so firstly, when you're talking about normal payment, there's either half payment damages or full payment damages. Okay, if obviously there's a different value of the death benefit versus an injury benefit, it's a different calculation. That's number one. But you have got a concept. If your ox is tame, according to all the rabbis, if your ox is tame and you haven't been a party to being negligent, okay, then the Kofer payment, which is an atonement-based payment, is excluded. Your actual payment for the death of that person is included. They're two separate payments. The one is an atonement because you have actually caused the loss of life if you knew the ox was wild and muad and forewarned. It's a different payment. It's like you give korbanos for a chatas offering or a sin offering. They're different payments. Gav, they're different payments.
No, I understand that, but what payment? What do you have to pay if you kill the fetus, but not the mother? The fetus dies with your ox, and what's the payment if the woman actually dies?
Gav, firstly, payments and that we're still going to discuss in later chapters. The
All
only
right,
thing
okay,
is,
I'll wait for you then.
listen, the only thing that we have to know now is what Kofer is and when do you pay it. So think of Kofer like almost a chatas offering where if you sinned, you pay the special payment. What I'm saying is as follows. If your ox has created damage on numerous occasions and people have been badly injured or animals have been badly injured and they've nearly lost their life, and finally your animal has taken a human life, that is absolute negligence because you were warned by the court more than 3 times according to a buyer and more than 2 times according to Rava. And for that, you are spiritually responsible for the death of that person. The rabbis in general hold that there's no kofer payment if your animal is tame, if it's tam, because you've got no history of it acting unusually. And one of the characteristics of carrying damage is it's both that the animal does intend to kill or injure, but also that it's an unusual feature. Whereas all the other animals are muadin from the beginning, because they intent, because they are culpable from the beginning. Do you understand what I'm saying? The very fact that we use caring for unusual damage is it's not natural for an animal to just go rogue. And therefore, why are you spiritually responsible if your animal acted out and your animal had a calm nature before? Why should you be responsible in Shemaim for causing the death of that person when you were not negligent?
No, agree.
That's different to paying for the damage or death that you caused. That is a given. You pay for that. If your ox is tame, you pay half payment damages. Is it fair or not fair? Well, whether it's fair or not fair, there is a compromise. Your ox has not had a history of habitual goring, and therefore, if it injures another animal or kills another animal, you pay half to the limitation of the gufa of the attacking animal. That's different to Kofer. Kofer is an atonement payment.
I understand that. So
Okay.
Kofer is when there's a death involved.
Yes, only when there's a death involved, no injury.
No, I just didn't really understand with the pregnant woman part. That was.
I'll tell you now. So basically, just hang on a second. Basically, all the rabbis saying that there is no kofer payment for a tam animal that kills a person because it's not in the verse. Number one, it seems to exclude it in the verse. And the animal by logic hasn't had a track record of bad behavior, and therefore the owner can't be spiritually responsible. He hasn't been negligent.
Agree. So
Fine.
then where do we get? So that's the problem I had. So I'm going back to what I originally said. How do we get how come we said previously that a person whose animal kills somebody is, it, regardless if the animal's time or not, what I said earlier, the animal's automatically not time. What's the other one?
Muad.
What? See, I don't understand why the rabbis are saying there's no Kofer payment if you kill somebody. They take into account the time part, but then we've also learned the fact that if a person's killed, the animal becomes muad from the outset. So I've just got that. I'm battling with that contradiction.
All right. All right.
Is it going to be covered later? Then it's fine.
Look, if your animal kills somebody, that animal is stoned to death. Okay, whether or not you pay the Kofer payment is depending on whether the animal is tame or habitually gored. If you are, if it's a tame animal, you're not spiritually responsible because you haven't been negligent, according to the rabbis. The verse seems to exclude tam, and therefore you don't pay Kofer unless the animal is muad and forewarned. Okay, just let's keep it simple.
Let's keep it simple.
And
right.
then,
yeah, it's fine. I got that.
and then, according to Rav Yosef Haglili, there's no exclusion for the word tam. That when it says a man or a woman it shall pay, it's excluding a fetus, because a fetus is not yet born. So you don't pay the Kofer payment for a fetus. Doesn't mean you don't pay the woman the equivalent of the damages.
Okay, now I've got it now. I understand that now. Sorry, I never.
In terms of your question, and is the animal automatically a muad if it thinks yes? From that point on, the animal is a muad because it kills a person, and I think they, as far as they do kill the animal. So I don't think it can go from muad to being allowed after it kills somebody to kill anybody else.
Okay, so you're saying that once it's killed somebody, it's treated as tam, but the animal becomes muad immediately.
So no. What I'm saying is, if the animal is a tame animal, you don't have to pay the Kofer payment because you weren't negligent. You have to pay the actual damage or the death value. The animal is stoned, and you can't get benefit from the animal, and that's the end of the animal.
Yeah, that's the end. So can't proceed. All right, that's perfect. And you, because you weren't negligent, you don't have any problem with Shemayim. I get that.
Yeah. So Rabbi Yosef Haglili says no. It's the same as the tam in the public domain, that you would pay half payment damages for Kofer for a tam. He still holds you do. Why? Because firstly, I don't know his reasoning, but you must know that a tam, if it can be tam up to 3 times, you are negligent to a certain degree. You are negligent to a certain degree. He doesn't say this. I'm just interpreting that it's possible. In other words, according to a buyer, your animal has to create the act 3 times, and on the 4th occurrence becomes muad. Now, if your animal has attacked people and injured the first 2 times, and on the 3rd time it kills somebody, I think you are a little bit responsible in Shemayim.
Yes, but if it happens, but Rabbi, what's his name, Glili? He's saying, but in theory, what he's saying is, even if the animal hasn't done anything wrong ever, and it's come, that immediately it's Kofer payment. So
no, half Kofer. Half Kofer.
So your argument, if it's 2 or 3 times, if it's just before muad and it's been warned a couple of times, then your argument's 100%. But in the case where it's never been warned in his life, he's still saying you have to pay half Kofer, which is kind of strange, which I understand. Yeah. All right.
Look, I don't think it's strange, because the fact that Hashem designated you to create the death of the animal is something wrong with you spiritually. Do you remember there was a case where there were 2 great rabbis, and in the one guy's precinct, somebody got mauled to death by a lion, and he never spoke to his colleague for 3 days. And his colleague said to him, well, why are you upset with me? He said, there's something very wrong with the fact that you did it, that such a death could occur in your community. That's why if you have an accidental murder, they had to wait for the Kohen Gadol to die before they could come back from the city of refuge. Because on the Kohen Gadol, he did something wrong to be able to merit in his community somebody that was capable of accidental murder. That's why they had to wait for the Kohen Gadol to die. So therefore, if you've chosen to be the catalyst of somebody else's death, there's something wrong with you spiritually.
Yeah, I get that.
So maybe that could be the reason. Anyway, so Rav Yosef Haglili says it only comes to exclude an aborted fetus. Now, one of the reasons that it could exclude it, Gavin, is that aborted fetus doesn't have any dependents. It hasn't done any mitzvot yet. It's not productive in this world as of yet. Do you understand?
That I understand. I think that you explained that nicely now. I've got that. Thank you.
Right, so that you'd still pay for the actual damage to the parents. That's different. That's different to the Kofer of spiritual culpability. It hasn't been born. So fine. Rabbi Talmud takes it one step further. Rabbi Glili says whether in the public domain or the private domain, it's the same that we're saying that if Rabbi Yosef Haglili goes according to Rabbi Talmud, we don't know, then it's full payment for Kofer Tam in the premises of the damaged party. And if Rabbi Glili goes according to the sages, it's half payment damages for Keren Tam in the premises of the damaged party, because the sages say the law is not divergent, Rav Yochanan, between Keren payment in the private domain and the public domain, because the verse never specifically mentions about domain, and therefore the law is the same. So we don't know. Rav Yosef Glili, if he holds according to the sages, then he still says it's half payment for the Kofer for Tam, and full payment for Muad, and it doesn't make a difference which premises it's in.
Yeah,
if he's holding according to Rabbi Talfon, it's half payment damages for Kofer Tam in the public domain, but full payment damages in the damaged party's yard.
Okay. I want to ask you one more question. Sorry, I know I'm interrupting with you. Sure. Do you know what, when you pay damages and Kofer, what's the difference in the amount? What does it actually mean when you pay damages? So if they injure you and you have to go to hospital and everything, they pay all those costs. What's Kofer now?
No. We Gav, I keep saying the same thing. In 83b, we're going to go through how the damages and the calculations work. We haven't gone through
so leave it. That's fine. All right.
All I'm saying is at this stage, what you're being introduced to is the categories of damage. That's what we're being introduced to. And for some reason, when a person injures another person, medical bills, pain, humiliation, as well as almost convalescing, is added to actual damage. So it would seem that actual damage, if an ox injures somebody, medical bill doesn't seem to be added. Otherwise, why would it be added as a separate category? We don't know what it means, what's covered. But then it wouldn't be added as a separate category. But since we haven't done it, what the Gemara is trying to do is every chapter builds you up to new concepts. Before you discuss amounts, you've got to have the concepts clear.
Okay, now I get it. I remember you once told me this before, and I apologize.
No, nothing to apologize for. So the concept is...
I forgot. You said that you are going to come to all these amounts and calculations.
Yeah. So Rabbi Talfon is just saying that he holds the premises of the damaged party in the act of in the actual payment without Kofer for injury is full payment and half payment for injury in the public domain. He has a kol v'chomer. So he says the same with Kofer payment. It's full damages in the private domain and half damages for the Keren Tam in the public domain. Now, we know with the ox muad, you pay Kofer, full Kofer no matter where it occurs, even according to the sages. All right, so now that we understand it, Kevin, Arthur, do you want to take a stab at giving how it works? I noticed an awkward silence.
Everybody awake there?
Barely. And what I got, so for the principle in the private and the public domain applies in terms of half and full damages. That I got, and for Kofer as well. And,
okay, so what do the sages say as far as Kofer? Let's go step by step. Let me know.
Pay it's like a penalty. It's like a teshuva payment.
Okay, that's good. That's good. That's true. That's true.
I don't know. Other than that, I can't.
Penalty. What do the rabbis sages say in terms of kofer, Gavin? Just that one answer, just that.
Okay, so the rabbis say that kofer payment only applies when the animal is tam.
No.
Not tam, muad. So, because there were two opinions. So, kofer, according to the rabbis, is only applied when the animal is tam. Not tam, muad. And it doesn't matter which domain it's in.
Perfect. And what's the payment for, what's the payment for kofer? It's full payment.
You mean what? Yeah, it's full payment, yeah.
Okay.
In either domain.
In either
It's
domain.
full, it's not half. It's full in either domain. It doesn't matter when. Once the animal's muad, kofer is applicable.
Oh, muad, yes, okay.
It's applicable. If the animal's muad, it's full kofer payment. They don't believe in half kofer payment. They only believe in half damages. So when it comes to muad, then it's full kofer payment in either domain. That's it.
Okay, no, that's fine. The reason I didn't want you to go into a whole lot of other issues is because we want to get each issue clear. Gav, I know you know it.
But I apologize. I was referring. I wanted to just go one step back, which is the rabbi saying the fact that it's half. It's if it's tam, it's half payment in the in both domains. And then I was going to go into the kofer. All right, fine. Carry on.
So this Gavin knows it well. So the thing of it is that let's keep it simple. Principle number one, let's look at a muad animal. Before we even do tame, let's get muad out the way. So actual damage for muad is full payment, nezek shalem, full payment that if you damage 100 zuz, you pay 100 zuz. If your death factor of a Canaanite slave is 30 silver shekels, it's 30 silver shekels. So whatever your payment is, it's full payment for muad from choice property or cash. Why choice property? So that you can sell it and convert it to cash. So muad is full payment for kofer. Doesn't matter if it's in the public domain or the private domain with Keren. And it's full payment from choice property. So the kofer is full payment and the actual damage is full payment from choice property. And it does not matter where the damage takes place. That's muad. Is everybody clear on muad before we put the muad out the way?
Yeah.
Oh?
I'm sort of getting it. So let me see if I can give it back to you. So the animal is moored. It's full cover payment no matter public or domain. That's it.
Public or private. If it kills somebody.
Public or private, sorry. If it kills somebody, yeah.
For Keren only.
We're just discussing Keren now.
Yeah.
So for killing, full payment for muad, no matter what domain. Excellent. Now, as far as muad, it's full payment for the actual damage from choice property, no matter which domain it occurs in. It's the same for the actual damage. Kofer is the atonement payment for the death, and the actual damage for death or injury is full payment from choice property. The calculation is different from death compared to injury. It's obviously a different amount. Okay, so great. That's muad out the way. Now, with regards to tam, Gavin, I'm going to ask you, before we go through the kofer, what is the rules regarding tam? If your animal injures another animal, or it injures a person, or and on what domain? What are the rules of tam? Just let's go for injury. Forget about kofer at the moment.
Okay, so if your animal injures in the either private or public domain, it's half damages.
According to whom?
According to the rabbis. If you go according to Lili, I think it's Rabbi Lili. If you go according to him, he says it's half kofer in the public domain, in the private.
Hang on, before we even go to kofer, what does Rabbi Kofer say about
Okay,
the
so Rabbi
actual
Tarfon is different. So Rabbi Tarfon doesn't hold. So the rabbis hold that it's half payment in the public and private, because nowhere there's no source for there being a differentiation between the domains. As far
Excellent.
as far as Rabbi Tarfon goes, he says no. He holds by the fact that he does a Kofer and he says that if Shane and Regel in the public domain, there's no payment, but in there's no payment for damages. Yet, whereby in the private domain there's full payment. Therefore, he does a Kofer. He says even more so if there's no payment in the public domain for Shane and Regel, but there's half payment for Karen, then Karen should at least should also be full payment. Should be the same as Shane and Regel.
Excellent. Now, where does Rabbi Tarfon apply the dayu for actual damages on the private domain?
So sorry, it was a few days ago. I remember he applied it. That's a good question. I've gone blank for a second. I do remember.
Guys, remember the second lenient. Gavin did excellently.
Yeah, I know, but I've forgotten this point. I remember he had a lenient.
The second leniency is that we pay for tam on the gufa of the attacking animal. So where Rabbi Tarfon on the where he says there's full payment on the damaged party's premises, he still applies the dayu to restrain it, that you only play from the gufa of the attacking animal, which means it's not from choice property. So even though he's still saying there's full payment with regards to the damaged parties yard for carrying, the rabbis say, as Gavin said, it doesn't matter where the damage takes place. Tam is half payment damages from the gufa of the damaging animal. Rabbi Tarfon says it's half payment in the public domain, full payment in the damaged party's premises, but he still applies the dayu to constrain it, because the source law is Keren, which says you pay for time from the damaging attacking animal's body when you sell it, and therefore that constraint occurs even in the damaged party's yard.
Which is correct. But now, one thing I want to ask you is that, sorry, I should have asked this before when we originally tackled it. How does he get around the fact that you're not giving choice property, Rabbi Tarfon?
No, because you have to apply a dayu. You can't make the law in the public domain, which is where the law is extracted from, more in the applied case of the damaged party's yard.
So you have no, Gavin, a partial one. That's number one.
No, Gavin,
partial
you can't. This is exactly the point of the dayu. You can't invent the law to be more stringent.
So no, but isn't he ignoring the source? The source says that you have to give.
No, the source. No, that's not the source. The source can only be from Keren, because Keren is the known factor of what you pay in the public domain, which is half payment damages. So he's not ignoring it if he uses the kol v'chomer, but he can't let it be completely free. So that second leniency of paying from the damaging animal, he has to apply the dayu in some manner.
But then I understand that, which is perfect. I understand where he's coming from. But then how does he get around, just asking another question, how does he get around the fact that he's not giving it from choice property? I know if you give from choice property, you can't apply the dayu, but how does he get around that verse that specifically says?
He doesn't have to, according to the laws of...
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
According to the laws of halacha, where we learn Gezerah Shava and all the humatic principles, he cannot apply a more stringent application in the target area. So the more stringent would be from... He can't apply the principle of muad from choice property, because that has nothing to do with tam. He has to say it's from the damaging party. He can't invent a more stringent application. That's one of the laws.
Okay, so is he still applying tam in the private domain?
No, the constraint of tam from the damaging body's animals. So it says it's full payment, but to the constraint of the attack